To Beyond the Border, a radio show about all things immigration and more. I'm with three amazing, very experienced immigration attorneys here in the Atlanta area, and I'll let them introduce themselves.
Hi, everybody. This is Killa Marti from Marti Law Firm.
No, you go ahead.
Oh,
you keep talking.
This is Jennifer Bensman from Bensman Law in Roswell, Georgia.
Hi everyone, I'm Melaney LaGrone with LaGrone Law, and we are out of Lawrenceville, Georgia.
Okay, you're listening to the new WCEG Network, WCEG Talk Radio. Watch us live on your smart TV, YouTube, WCEG Network. I am Elizabeth Garvish. We'll try this over again. The name of our show is Beyond the Border. We're the worldwide community empowerment group, and we speak life into the community. I'm here with three other immigration attorney hosts, and I'll let them introduce themselves.
This is Killa Marti from Marti Law Firm. We're out in Cobb County.
This is Jennifer Bensman from Bensman Law out of Roswell, Georgia.
Hi everyone, I'm Melaney LaGrone with LaGrone Law, and we are in Lawrenceville, Georgia.
Okay, so this morning, I wanted to kind of just start. We haven't been on the air. We haven't had the show in a few months. So a lot of things have happened every day, and I think during the Trump administration, every day there's a new policy in immigration law. There's a new change. It's very hard to kind of keep up with everything. So as lawyers, we're very challenged. Some of those things are good. Many of those things are not good for our clients and for us, and they make our lives a little bit harder. But I wanted to just start. There is some good news and some new developments that are positive, and Killa's going to tell us about that.
So in December of, I believe it was December 29th, there was a bill passed that became law. It's the Liberian Immigration Fairness Act. It actually surprised me. I don't know about you guys. Maybe we weren't just keeping tabs on it very closely, but it basically allows for Liberian nationals to apply for a green card straight up, no petitioner. And the thing is that we want people to do this as soon as possible because it does have a time limit of December 20th, 2020. So if you don't get in your petitions by then, you won't be able to. And this is I'm talking about a chance of a lifetime. I can't imagine, like, clients from all nationalities would love this to happen to their country. But we do understand Liberia has gone through years, decades of civil war. And even though they, fairly recently, an Ebola virus outbreak, that kind of devastated the country yet again. So Liberia has gone through a lot, and it's understandable then that this would be something that would be passed. The requirements for this is that you have to have been physically present in the U.S. since November of 2014. I believe it was November 20th, 2014. You have to be otherwise admissible, and that's just a big fancy word to say that you are not, you don't have anything that disqualifies you from becoming a resident. Typically, the biggest inadmissibilities come in the form of a criminal conviction. Specifically with this law is you can't have an aggravated felony, you can't have 2 or more crimes involving moral turpitude, which again is just fancy words for crimes that are pretty bad in nature. I mean, it's hard to explain, but basically a crime that speaks to your moral character.
Or an aggravated felony.
Felony.
2 or more crimes involving moral turpitude.
Exactly. And then finally, you also can't be a persecutor. Like in the past, if you were involved with the Liberian government or the rebels in persecuting people, and now you want to benefit from this law, you can't. So if you meet these requirements, call us, call a reputable immigration attorney, do a search on AILA, the American Immigration Lawyers Association, to find a reputable attorney in your area to help you apply, because this is truly a once in a lifetime type of chance.
Yeah.
Which just kind of came in under the radar. Like
Yeah.
it wasn't, but I think there were just good lobbying efforts.
Right.
That made this happen.
I think it came in, I was looking at it afterwards. It actually was like piggybacked into a Department of Defense funding bill.
Yeah.
So it was kind of like, I don't know if everyone is away for Christmas and they just slipped it in, because I think all of us keep our ear to what's going on in Congress. And for all four of us not to have heard this, even rumblings of it until it happened, is pretty amazing.
Crazy.
Yeah, but I mean, we'll take it. And I think
Yeah.
if anyone's listening and knows anybody who's Liberian, like, as immigration attorneys, like, we see different bills and paths to get legalization, but this is, for lack of a better word, the golden ticket. I mean, you can't emphasize enough how big and how huge this is.
And if you miss that 1 year deadline,
Yes.
you're going to be very sorry.
Right.
I mean,
Right.
those deadlines. I mean, I don't know if you guys were you practicing when 245I? Remember 245I?
I was practicing as an immigration officer.
Oh. Yeah, so there was 245I was were grandfathered, so you could pay a fine if you were either out of status or entered illegally, and so that sunset. The first time was 97, the second time was 2001, but people were just like running to get a petition filed, and because you could still benefit from 245I, which now you have to be legally present in the U.S. To qualify for judgment generally, unless you're married to a U.S. citizen. But so interesting. I don't know. Have you guys been following SB 386? It's employment based.
No.
Okay. So what's happening right now? It's interesting. It started out in the House. There was a bill. It was like 1104 or one. I can't remember what exactly the number it was, but basically this bill is coming through, and it actually passed the House, and there's a lot of pressure from businesses that have a lot of Indian nationals as employees that are waiting for green cards. So nationals from various countries, mostly India and China, there's a backlog. So you can apply for your green card, but because of the availability of visas and the per country limits, you wait 10 years. So I just talked to one of my clients. They have a 2015 priority date, and it's 2009 is the available current priority date for the second preference employment-based category. So, and he's worried about, he's got a son on H4, wants to apply for the Hope Scholarship and qualifies. And I was just like, just investigate some of the private grants and those kind of things. But so and these kids are turning 21. They're having to go into F1 status, and they're not even going to be able to get a green card through their parents. I'm not sure about the Child Status Protection Act. So this bill, it passed through the House and it went into the Senate. It was kind of touch and go for a while, because it was like they're voting on it. There's not any hearings. S386. But what it's going to do is take away the per country limits. Okay. So
just for employment or in general?
For employment.
Okay,
so that would mean that there's a whole chart on this. I talked about this when I was in our other our CLE that we did on business immigration law at the Georgia Bar, but there were it takes away the per country limits, so that's great. So a lot of these Indians that have been waiting a while, they're going to be able to get their green cards. The backlog will clear probably in about 5 or 10 years, but anyone starting now and the rest of the world, now their wait will be 10 years.
10 years.
So if this passes, it will help temporarily a certain amount of people, but it will completely mess up my business, because I'm like, a lot of times we can't do a non-immigrant visa. So someone comes to me, I want to bring this person. I'm like, well, they don't qualify for a non-immigrant visa, but maybe we'll just do a green card for them. And I've been doing green cards now which means we recruit for U.S. workers and do a Department of Labor application. It's been if everything goes well, a year and 2 months, we can have them here, and they might be waiting abroad or they may be here, or just depending. So we've been able to, the H-1B visas, the special occupation visa, those run out every year. There's not one. And then now the denial rate for those visas is 34%. So everyone's getting those denials. But so this is in Congress right now. But I was at a conference yesterday, and so Leon Rodriguez he used to work at the USCIS, and he's at a law firm now. But he was kind of giving his update on what's going to happen with that bill, because there's another bill actually in Congress right now. I'll look up the number. I'll look up the name. I'm going to pull up my notes in a minute. But that would be a better option. But S-386, there was a couple times, I think it was November, December, we're like, oh my gosh, if this passes, it was kind of scary because they were going to push it through. But so right now, I think there are some Republicans. I think Perdue actually blocked it. I think, I don't know what the motive was. He blocked it at one point, and then another senator came in and blocked it. But it was kind of like touch or go there, because if that passes, wow, we're going to see a big change. So, and there's some other legislation in there that would work better, but I don't think that's going to get traction. What Leon Rodriguez was saying yesterday was there really, a lot of things aren't going through, like these H-4 EAD, taking that off the chopping block, which is a work permit for the spouse of a non-immigrant worker in the country. So that's not off the chopping block yet, although the plans have been in place for a couple of years. Certain things that are employment based are not happening because they're so concerned about the border. Their focus is to just change asylum laws, just shut that down. And so we're seeing a little bit of a lag on really. And the other thing, there's also the administration wants to change the H-1B. We're going to strengthen the H-1B process, basically, is what it's called. And so I think that is kind of been in the works, but it's really just to cut down on the number of people that are going to be able to qualify for H-1B. But because of our economy is going so well, there's such a need. There's not an economic incentive to make that go through. So hopefully that's not going to be the case. But what we're seeing right now, so that's kind of going on. I don't know. It seems like the last few years, there's not, except for the Liberian thing, there's not a lot of things that ever get through. I mean, no one can agree. No one can find a solution that's going to be workable. There's such a big hot topic issue, and each side is just fighting back. And we just kind of continue in this broken system, doing the best we can for our clients. And now, it's even more broken. But I don't know. There's so many other things that I want to talk about, like hot topics. But I'm going to let you guys kind of take over a little bit. What have you been seeing in your practice? I have a couple things to share, that like some good things that have happened and some bad things that have happened in my practice. But what's been going on, since we last talked in your practices? What are you seeing? Trends? Successes.
I mean, I'll talk about the immigration court for just a second. I'm trying to think when's the last time we talked and what was brought up, but one trend that's going on in the immigration court is that they're required when a person has served a document to go to an immigration judge for deportation, that they have to have a date specific on that notice. And so what's going on is that they're kind of making, to get around random dates, what we call almost fake dates for people to show up. And when they do show up, there's no judge available. They're not real dates. And you think of someone who has does not have any command of the English language, and being able to navigate and get there and try to understand what is going on. It's really, really a big mess. And the other thing that's going on with the immigration court is that they have openings for judges. They're labeled as visiting judge or judge whatever, and they get dockets scheduled already. And then people will come for that docket, and then the judge never got placed. There's nobody there. So they're constantly having to change.
But if you don't show up, then you could be
exactly.
You could be removed in absentia.
Right, and a lot of the people that are getting these dates are people that are newly arrived, and they have changed their address. So they're coming from, California, from Louisiana, from all over the United States for this one hearing, and trying to change it to location closer to them, but nothing's happening. You know, I don't know. I mean, the incentive to actually come to court is very low when these circumstances come up. It's just crazy.
And it's taking the courts forever to schedule in non-detained dockets people who get released. So I've had clients released since October that still don't have a hearing date. You know, which in a way is good, but sometimes you want that date so you can file relief, file for work permits, and it's just difficult. You don't know how to advise your clients. And I've had colleagues that where they are sent to 2 different locations, and the client goes to one court and the attorney goes to another court, and it's such a waste of resources
to wait to see which
to wait
because you
and
don't know.
see, and it might not even happen. So.
Right.
It's really discouraging, and I know the Atlanta Immigration Court has added like 4 new judges about, and they're kind of shuffling people around. I guess the 180 Ted Turner is gonna become more of the detained, and then the annex that they call is gonna be more of non-detained, and we'll see what happens. I mean, hopefully it's for the better. We got rid of some bad judges, but they just went up higher in the totem pole. And I've heard that they're actually coming to cover hearings. So Judge Cassidy's been back. I heard Wilson too. So it's discouraging to say the least.
Well, I'm just hoping that they get this whole thing with the dates under control, because I've actually had attorneys from out of state call me to go to court because they just got hired in on a case. The date is, tomorrow, and we're calling the EOIR hotline. There's no record of the A number on file, but yet the court is telling the attorney out of state, no, you have to be there, and so does your client. And so the client comes, we go to court, and once, like you said, there's nothing. There's no date, there's no judge for them, and we're just all standing around like, well, what do we do?
Well, the court administrator sent out an email, I guess, like 2 weeks ago saying, pretty much ignore
it,
but
they told them, no, show up.
Yeah,
otherwise, you're going to get in trouble.
Right, and a lot of them don't understand that they have like a court date, but also a reporting date with ICE, with Immigration Customs Enforcement, which is 2 separate locations, 2 separate, and so everybody's going think they're going here, but they should be there, and they haven't told anyone. And the reporting thing's another whole story. I mean, you have an 8 o'clock report time. People think they're in and out of there. They're there till 4 o'clock.
All day
They
long.
sit and wait. So if someone goes to reporting as opposed to court, and no one even acknowledges them for 8 hours, they missed everything.
I don't know how you guys do it.
It's just
it's madness.
It is crazy.
I mean, I feel like that. I feel like that too in our practice and in different ways. But I was just telling my client, it's the Wild West. It is the Wild West. Like literally, we live in America, but this is the way our legal system. And I feel like if they treated American citizens like that are born here like this, like they treat immigrants, and there's a reason behind this. It's all calculated. Like delay, deny, discourage any legal or illegal immigrant that will be in the country. I guess what the thought might be is that these are Democratic voters, or we don't. I mean, what is what is the I don't know what's behind it. The administration just wants to avoid, immigrating as many people as possible. I don't know. They're raising the fees for naturalization.
For several, percentage points.
It's just, I even think like we can go through and just be like, okay, Trump wants a wall. It's built. It's invisible, but we are banging into it every day. And it's difficult. And yesterday I was talking at our Georgia Alabama conference about professionalism. And these judges and these opposing counsel of the immigration court, they are attorneys. They are officers of the court. We have ideals of professionalism. You take the bar, and a lot of them, I don't know. They're not upholding these ideals of professionalism that we, as officers of the court, we are, and what professionalism really means in the eyes of the Georgia bar is it's not the bare minimum ethical minimum. It is a higher standard that's expected of you. It's not just doing what you shouldn't be doing, but doing the best, seeking justice, being like the best you can be, being like the best advocate, the best statesman, the best. And it's not always, like there's a lot of parties. You owe duties to your clients. You owe duties to the public. We are role models, and we are, people, we are leaders. So we have to stand up to that. But the challenge for us as immigration attorneys in immigration court is, how do we face these people that aren't upholding their professional...
Right. If we behaved like they behaved, we would get into a lot of trouble.
Yeah.
Showing up with no file. Showing up... I did an appeal recently for an asylee where the law, like case law, says that opposing counsel has a duty to file the country conditions, and they don't. And so these people, this guy had a second grade education from the foothills, the countryside of Afghanistan. Poor man couldn't elaborate on clear evidence of persecution for his minority ethnic group, and neither the judge developed the record nor did he hold the opposing counsel to their duty. And so those things, it's a lack of professionalism, and it's something that's going to haunt the department for years to come, because when you allow that level of lack of professionalism to pervade when it's okay and even applauded, it just creates a culture of corruption, really.
And I guess, do you think that it's coming from the department itself or individual people? Because I could not see myself, if I got hired, let's say, to work in immigration court, acting like that just because of the type of person that I am.
Right.
So is it that they have so much control over their employees that they're making them act this way, or is it just that people have their own views of immigrants,
right,
and that's showing through in their job?
I think it's a couple issues. I think, and I could see a change. I mean, when we had a chief counsel, that's the person who's in charge of the government attorneys, who was very fair and understanding, it was different. And then when we got new administration, probably about 12 years ago, you could see all those walls breaking down. Walls going up, I should say. The access to talk to an attorney before your case to resolve issues, gone. That level of customer service or just even respect is completely gone. And the fact of the matter is, their job is awful. Think about it. You have to go in and you're given 65 cases. You've never reviewed them. You have to go sit in court. You can't agree to anything. So they just become complacent in it. And the only people who are applying for these jobs are people fresh out of law school who have no idea. They really don't have an interest in it. And people just don't stick around. And when people do become semi-good at the job, like I can think of a few government attorneys who are good, but they don't go to court anymore. They manage people, so you don't see that level anymore. Yeah. And it's just allowed to happen. And when you have judges sit there and let them keep doing that, the judges are just as bad too. Like I had a case that came on the Board of Immigration remanded it because the judge didn't allow this person an opportunity to file his asylum application. He didn't speak English. He tried everything he could to find someone that could translate it for him. ICE decided to release him. He was sent to California. He tried to change his venue and came back, and this all happened in 2 weeks. The judge gave him 2 weeks to submit his asylum application. He came back into court and appeared and said, "I'm having troubles finding someone to help me translate this." On top of it being a case where his claim for asylum was very horrific, dealing with sexual violence, being able to speak out and tell someone about that. You're not going to tell your bunkmate in the detention center that you what your sexual preference is and what happened to you. You're not. So the judge denied his relief because he didn't file his asylum application timely. And asylum application is ridiculous anyways. Your name, your date of birth, and 3 lines of why you want to file it. It's not that hard. If he had someone who would just write it out for him. But anyways, so the judge reopened the case because he had to accept his asylum application. We went in for it, and the judge was like, "I'm sorry, we can't go ahead today because I don't have my file." How do you not have your file?
Mm-hmm.
Right.
So he had to get back on a plane and go back to California.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it goes with the government attorneys, and it also goes with the judges.
And and I think to answer your question, and based on what you've said, it's kind of both. Mm-hmm. It's like when you have good leaders, it kind of trickles down, right. And you attract. So whatever you put out there, you attract.
Exactly.
So if you have a good leader, you're going to attract ethical people who are doing it for the love of it, who want to learn, who want to grow. Mm-hmm. But when you have someone who is either prompted by their own desires or like orders from up top, then you start attracting individuals who either don't know what they're getting themselves into or relish the power. And I've had this was one of the funniest things I've ever seen. But I saw it wasn't my client. I was just waiting to be called, and this attorney for Homeland Security, the I-130 for this person, and this is a petition based on marriage, had been approved. And so this attorney was just trying to get a continuance to be able to file the 485 and whatnot. And this gentleman took it upon himself to Zillow the address of the respondent and his wife to find out, and he wanted, before the hearing was over, to ask him what the house went for, basically. Mm-hmm. And he was like, this guy had been detained for like months, and he's like, I don't know, my wife had to sell our house to pay our legal fees. Yeah. And this man then told the judge, well, Your Honor, I don't think this is a real marriage because he doesn't know what the house was sold for. Wow. And fortunately, there was a judge that was like, look, the I-130 was approved. That's out of my jurisdiction. This is not the time or place.
That was opposing counsel?
That was opposing counsel.
What a waste of time.
A waste of time. And I really do think that there's, gosh, I struggle to have another answer other than pure evil, because, well, there's a dehumanization. You have to dehumanize people in order to abuse them to the extent that you're abusing them. But despite, and I was listening to this on NPR, like despite a report saying that the Adelanto detention center has had horrible human rights abuses. People have bone deformities, have died because of the lack of competent medical care. And this is a detention center run by the GEO Group. And despite all that, like clear-cut evidence of horrible abuse, I know in other detention centers too, women have lost babies, like just horrible things, and they're gonna expand it instead of trying to like fix whatever's wrong with it. And in addition to that, California passed a law to ban private detention centers operating in the state of California, but the government went ahead and the federal government went ahead and had the GEO Group sign the contract to remain in place before this law went into effect so that they could continue. And so I have no way to explain. How do you still do your job knowing all the horrible things that are happening, both as a GEO Group, a corporate officer, as a DHS top officer, as a detention center worker? I can't explain.
I mean,
it doesn't make sense.
I just don't get how there's, more than half the population just, and I know, okay, there's, we have healthcare being ruined. There are solutions here, and just not treating, whether you're born in the United States or you're a U.S. citizen or not, you are still a human being. You are a person. I mean, it's just beyond me. It brings tears to my eyes that this is what is happening, and it's happening at, in all the service centers. Here's, we had a conference yesterday. So Leon Rodriguez, who was the head of immigration, or Department of Homeland Security or whatever it was, but he, every day there's a memo. There's a new policy. Here's a memorandum. This is just, we're slowly, and these officers were also trained in with law enforcement. So you had you have weapons training, and then you have people with the uniform. So they're supposed to be adjudicating benefits, but they're also trained in this environment. But the policies are coming down from the top, where and it's easy. You're sitting and these service centers where they're adjudicating many of the applications. They could be VAWA, application to use, and and employment based, but they're they're working from home. They're somewhat isolated, and then they just they don't. It's hard to see. I think if you're at the field offices, you're sitting down with people in front of you. There's it's not all gone there, but the service centers. I mean, the detained. It's like you're an animal. The Foreign Affairs Manual, they took away the word foreign worker and put alien.
Yeah, they do the same thing in a lot of housing memos.
So that's like a Nazi playbook.
It is. It's crazy, and I'm just like almost. I can't understand it. But yeah, I mean that's where we are, and that's where we may be for another 4 years. Maybe if Trump's reelected, the pressure will be off a little bit because he's running so hard on this immigrant. Being tough on immigrants. Maybe the pressure will be off, and it won't be. Maybe I can only hope. You can only think positive and try to think things are going to be better because, and keep fighting. That's what I was saying yesterday when I was talking about professionalism. We as lawyers, we're admitted to the bar, but in other countries like Great Britain, they say they're called to the bar. So we have a calling. We've answered this calling and really and it's it's great that Georgia takes this so seriously because they're like, hey guys, we're called to this. We are models. We are leaders. We are just. I said because I asked the audience. I was like, what words would you throw out there? Honesty, integrity, respect. And I was like, fighter. Fighter for people that can't fight for themselves. So it's interesting, and I'm glad we're talking about this. And if just one person hears it and is outraged, but it's just interesting to me that this is happening. And these injustices are happening, and just nothing is, and it's just things just go by, and no one cares. And I know worse things happen, and horrible things happen in other countries, but this is America. This should not be happening. So that, and I don't practice in immigration court. I don't do detain probably because it would be too emotionally overwhelming for me. So kudos to you guys for doing that, but. It's just sad. It's sad. This is going to be a sad time in our history. I'm just wondering what, when our kids are older and they're in their social studies class or whatever, or even when grandchildren, what's going to be the story about this, or even 100 years from now.
Yeah.
It's the new form of slavery. I mean, that's what we learned, and and I think that's almost like that's what they're going to be learning. That's just kind of just a different group.
It's really interesting, and all these, and I'm so glad, and I feel like we can keep hope alive because there are thousands of people, attorneys. Advocates that are fighting for immigrants. So,
and what's good that we have to highlight the positives too is that it's forcing groups that had never sued the government to say, look, it's not enough to just say, hey, please don't do this. Like the LIRS, the Lutheran Immigration and Refugee Services, sued for the current policy on refugees, and that was a group that would have
normally would have never.
Because that's the only option we have.
Yeah.
So the only option we have is federal lawsuit. I feel like I'm on the camera, on the side, So the only option is federal lawsuit. So Trump issued the new policy on public charge. So that's been enjoined. But that's a list of factors that basically all the poor people get out. And then the health insurance proclamation came out. So you have to have health insurance if you're going to immigrate to the United States, which is almost physical. How do you, if you're in another country, how do you do that?
Right.
And it's crazy. so that was enjoined in federal court. So, there are big law firms that are, taking the charge, working on these cases. And so for me, I had a bad denial. And I'm not a litigator, but I went to federal court. I filed my first declaratory action. That was, and I got my client on board. So this was a case where there's no threat to America. He is like a multinational manager, executive, basically from the UK, and they basically denied his case twice, saying he wasn't an executive, or they also said we lied. Whatever excuse. Textbook. L1A, multinational manager executive case, denied it twice at the USCIS. So I filed a declaratory action January 2nd, reopened and approved. So, as lawyers, we are learning to pivot. Okay. So it's a waste of time and resources. It's ridiculous. I mean, does that make sense to anybody out there? Okay. Yeah. Get rid of the executive from the UK. Make sure he doesn't get here. He's only creating jobs in the U.S. And then I had another denial. I mean, I've had more denials than I want to even say, but I have another one. I'm hoping we can go to court because it's the best option. Because it's just I had another case denied where it's and I didn't file it from the beginning. I just got it at the notice of intent to deny stage. But it was here's the name of the company, which was whatever, American something, and it's a food company. So, and then where the location of the job, they Googled it or whatever, and they're like, well, there's a food market at this location. Well, yeah, the DBA on everything, the trade name. It's franchised. It's a food company, but the name doesn't. But the main, and there's other LLCs. It's I think you don't always have your business. You don't always. I don't. But who cares? You can name your company whatever you want to name it.
Right.
But they're like, no, the name of your company is this, and there's a food market to it. I'm like, that's the business they do, and so they just denied it. I had income tax returns. We sent all this documentation. I was like, the federal court, a federal judge will not want to even look at this. The U.S. attorney will be like,
what are you doing to me?
Please don't waste my time.
Right.
So it's a lot of these things. So I think there might be quotas for denials. You've got to get, you get brownie points, you get something. I don't know. So that's what's going on. So, luckily we have big law firms that are enjoining some of these crazy policies. And it's interesting. I think every day in this new administration, there's been a policy that's come out. So we're having to figure out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I had something recent with a TPS, a gentleman, been in the U.S. since 1991, has always had a work permit. He's from El Salvador, TPS all the way. He got a removal order because they denied his asylum, but then TPS came into effect, so he was protected. He was able to travel, come back. It hired me at the end of November. Mid-December, they come out saying that, basically repeating, saying USCIS has jurisdiction to approve cases that have a final removal order, but they're otherwise eligible. But everything I'm hearing from all my colleagues is that USCIS is actually denying these, saying that this person should go to EOIR. It's like, how? How does
it ping pong around?
Yeah. How does EOIR have jurisdiction over a case that is closed? It's done with them. And so I had to meet with this person in January and say, look, everything in the law says we can do this. But I just want you to know they might deny it, and we're going to have to appeal. Yeah. So it's this thing of I wonder if people think that we're just trying to get them for more money or something. And that's why I tell people ahead of time before we file, so that they don't feel like, oh, I knew this all along and I just didn't tell them. But that's how schizophrenic
Nothing makes sense.
is.
So you're like, okay, and one of my clients was like, Elizabeth, I say hopefully too much. And he's like, the two words that I say too much, because he's into linguistics and how you speak is hopefully. I'm like, well, that's I'm a positive thinker, and I give percentages, but now it's well, here's what's going on. Let me give you some background. We used to have a denial rate for H-1Bs of 2%. Now it's 34%. We used to have an RFE rate, request for evidence rate, of this. Now it's 80%. So I'm going to tell you, there's statistics on all of this. So there's no change in the law. The regulations are the same, but policy changes, internal changes, this is what's happening. So yeah, you've got, I think, as part of us as lawyers, we have to just be like, this is crazy. And now we have information, there's articles, there's things you can share that with clients. I mean, and just be like, if you've been watching the news, I think anyone will know. But it's interesting because it just doesn't make any sense. For me, it just seems like, wow, you just wasted somebody's time. Yeah. You caused, like, literally, of course, in Department of Labor is like this, on the perm applications, if you make one tiny mistake, whatever, you can't fix it. A year will have gone by. You're done. You're starting at the beginning. So we have this, here's what I feel like. We are put to a standard of perfection, and have these new policies where we'll give discretion to the adjudicators. You don't have to issue a request for evidence if there's, because we want to cut down on skeletal applications, if you don't have all these documents there. So if there's one human error and you miss one piece of paper, then your client is set back, Years. 8, 9 months, a year, who knows? And then we are like, okay, well, I'm a human. There's, that song. Wow. I'm like, I'm only human. I believe, this is crazy. Right.
And what you missed isn't even relevant to the application.
Not even.
We have the same thing going on with asylum applications.
With the NA.
Visas. If something doesn't apply, you just normally just didn't put anything in there. Now it's like all 620 boxes. You have to write NA. If they don't, they're not married, they don't have kids, you have to write NA. That where the kid's name, the kid's date of birth, where they're born,
the middle initial,
and if you don't hit all of those, they'll return it to you.
Yeah, I have they still haven't decided whether they're gonna hire me for kicking some ass up at the USCIS, and I really want to, but it's this couple very much in love, very clear that it's a real relationship. They're eligible for adjustment of status, but the guy from Venezuela applied for asylum, and that was pending when they filed the 485. We go to the interview, everything's great, and then they go, well, we can't make a decision until your asylum is decided. And I was like,
withdraw the asylum then.
I know, but they're saying you have to withdraw the asylum, but it just doesn't sit well with me that that you are forcing someone to withdraw a perfectly legitimate claim just in order to approve something else when you can approve it. I want you to approve this first, and then send me a letter saying it's no longer relevant because this person's a green card holder. But don't make me go and withdraw a legitimate asylum claim porque no te da la gana, because it's not. I don't freaking want
to. Do you guys, matter of LK, or do you know about that? So if the asylum application, if the asylum application's pending, or was filed when they were still in valid status, and so this is we were talking, so I have one case filed in valid status, and then you have either it's a green card, a marriage, so it's second preference. We have an interview. Is that under? Have you heard of the matter of LK? And maybe I've got some employment-based cases where the asylum is supposedly. You're not maintaining lawful status. You're not killing unlawful presence, but you're maintaining lawful status. So I've got my first interview next week on that. But so we'll see if they make them. And I'm just saying, I wouldn't want to. I'm going to go in there and argue this case, which is very old. But.
Well, the issue would be, and I was thinking about it, if you withdraw the asylum, then they start accruing unlulawful presence.
Exactly.
So you put who knows when they're going to adjudicate the other application.
Here. You press approve, and I'll press withdraw.
Let's do that.
Okay. Yeah. I don't know.
So
it's interesting to see. I know there's still some good officers locally, but there's, the delays, and I feel like it is just, but you know what? I remember back, but the last thing I'm going to say before we take a break, I remember back. So this is in Houston, Texas. I just started, I was practicing immigration law, in the court and doing stuff. And I worked for a nonprofit. So it was in NACARA. And there was El Salvadoran, and nobody spoke English, all of that. And I just remember like the line outside of the immigration service, and this just struck me. Like I just remember, I'm 25 or 7 or whatever, but the line outside is cold, and people are just like, you can't come in. The immigration court, like the way that people looked at these people, the way they treated them, like that's probably the first time that I ever experienced like real, just like, it seemed like discrimination, but I was just like, wow, these people don't, and this is in the 90s, late 90s, 2000, but people, they're just, it's gone that way. It's our history, but these are downtrodden people, and they're like doing the best they can, but they're treated, still treated that way. But I mean, it's like, and now we're here later, it's the same thing. We're still fighting this, and we had it was better back then. Like things were better.
We didn't know that though.
We didn't have it.
It was way worse. But I remember the one thing I did, like it was just like, my client had to get her EED or she would lose her job. So she had to go down there in person and get it. And things were a lot different. Like there's piles of paper applications, I remember. But when we got there, it was freezing. She didn't have the proper clothes. She was going to have to wait in that line. We went in the morning, and they let me in because I was the attorney, but they wouldn't let her in. And I was just like, you know what? It's too cold for you to stand out here. We'll come back. It's like a 20-minute drive from all the way. I was like, I'll bring you back at 3 when the line's not as long. You know what? Because I can't. I can't do this. And I can't stand to see people treated like this. So it's interesting because that's like resonates with me. And that's kind of like, I'm like, I know. And I was telling people when I was doing the professionalism talk, I was like, we're called to be lawyers. We're called, and a lot of times people are trying to figure out what they want to do with their life, and I still have friends that are like 50 and they're just like, I still don't know. But you know what? I'm just so glad that I really found my calling. Like, this is just like, I'm going to be like, I still haven't like told my kids like exactly what I do. I don't think they understand. But, I'm like, here's what I do. And, let's look at all the people I've helped. Like, we counted the number of green cards that we had issued last year. I got sick and didn't put it out on the website, but on our social media. But I think it was like 55. I mean, that's not bad.
That is amazing.
In this administration.
In 1 year. I mean, we're just 5 people in the world, but 55 just that we got granted. We have lots of non-immigrant visas granted, but and citizenship, I think it was, I can't remember, but we had a lot of new citizens, and in 1 year we made this happen, and some of them were hard, but so I think it's just like this calling that we have. We just have to remember that, and remember the reason why we're doing it. Sometimes when it's so, I know everybody gets down. That's what I was trying to tell, like, kind of, we're in a room yesterday of immigration lawyers that all believe in this, are all amazing and all smart, and we're all facing this together, and I'm glad we're together. But, you just, these challenges, there's a reason for them. We're getting stronger. There's going to be change. Like, it's going to be better. We just have to think like that. And one lawyer, I'll end on this, came up to me and was like, oh, you're so positive. Why do you think you have hope? And I'm like, there's no other way I can be.
Well, my mom used to say, there's no evil that lasts more than 1,000 years, or a body that will withstand it. Things always change.
And you know what? And here's the deal. There will be grace from, we may not know it in our lifetime, but there will be some grace that we'll find in some of these atrocities that have happened. And like it's atrocious, honestly. But there's going to be some grace, and we're going to find it, and that's just, I hold on to that, because like I've had some things happen where I'm like, I can't understand, and there's lots of things that have happened to other people, and you're like, you just can't understand why. And sometimes we don't. Hopefully in our lifetime we figure that out. But so that's where we are. It's kind of crazy, and it's like we're getting deep, but it's time to take a break. This is WCEG Network and WCEG Talk Radio. We're live streaming you can watch on your smart TV or on YouTube on WCEG Network. We'll be back with Beyond the Border.